Hey there crafty friends, it's CeeCee for Scrapbook Centrale. Welcome to another edition of our Tutorial Tuesday. We'll be stamping with a whole bunch of different stamps, all coordinating from the Little Darlings company and to create this beautiful scenery. And we're also going to be using some papers by Pebbles from the Walnut Grove collection. The papers I'll be using are Laura and Harriet. I'm going to be using the reverse side of Harriet, as well as a nice light peachy cardstock and Copic markers. You're going to need the following stamp sets by Little Darlings: wingback chair, reading a good book, table and lamp, Chloe listening, and wall art set. You'll also need Memento Tuxedo Black ink pad, a pair of sharp scissors, the Stamp-A-Majig kit, your regular adhesive, as well as some foam adhesives, cotton candy stickles, one sheet of Easy Mount, some Post-it note paper for masking. Our card base will measure 6 by 12. Then we'll have a piece of this pattern paper measuring 5 7/8 by 5 7/8. Our second piece of pattern paper will measure 5 7/8 by 2.5. And from that same pattern paper, we will cut the strip at the bottom of the Harriet paper. And we'll leave it at the 12 inches because we're just going to trim it with our scissors. Then you'll need another piece of that light peach cardstock that measures 4 5/8 by 4 5/8. A piece of Nina cardstock measuring 4.5 by 4.5, and some leftover Nina cardstock to stamp our other elements. Before we start stamping, we need to do something with our Little Darling stamps. They come unmounted, and as you can see here, I have the sheet, the rubber sheet with the image on it, and this has no foam. So we've got those Easy Mounts Stamp and Store sheets, and you just have to glue this on top of the sticky side, cut around it with a good pair of scissors like the Tim Holtz tonic scissors, and this is a one-time operation. So I'm going to show you how I do this. I'm just going to glue it onto the sticky side. Now the sticky side is where you see the writing on the Easy Mount Stamp and Store sheet. I'm just going to go ahead and cut the little girl with my tonic scissors. So the first operation is, and I try not to uncover too much of the sticky part so as not to damage it. So I'm just going to go ahead and just give a few sharp cuts like so for now. And I try also not to put my scissors in the sticky portion so as not to gunk up my scissors too much. So now that I've got that part isolated, I'm going to zoom in so you can see. And I have to say that these are the best scissors to use. You need a short scissor like this. They're perfectly made for that. And the trick to cutting through these sheets is that you need to hold your scissors straight up. You don't want to go at an angle. You want a good cushion all around your image. So once you get the hang of it, it's really, really easy. So I just basically hold my scissors straight up like that and just make sharp cuts like this. And you want to remove as much of the rubber as possible without damaging your image. And there's my little girl. She's all prepped and ready to go. Now all I need to do is bring an acrylic block and reveal the cling part. And she's good to go. So this is a one-time operation, like I said. I'm going to go ahead and do all my other stamps. And here are my images or my stamps all nicely cut. So I'm going to put this aside and I will choose my Copic markers. And I'm going to bring in my pattern paper, and the reason I do this is to help me choose the Copic markers that I'll be using. I am matching the colors of the paper, and I have here my Copic chart that I got from their website, and I look at the pattern paper and I'm able to see what color will best suit the colors that I have on my pattern paper. The other tip that I can give you is I always keep the remnants of paper that I'll be using to stamp and color my image. In this case, I'm using the Neenah paper, and I identify each of the remnants. Now, this is the Neenah. We also have the Prism and the Copic Expressit. Today I'm going to be using the Neenah, so I found in my stash a little piece of Neenah cardstock, and what I do is I grab the color that I think best matches this turquoise here. For instance, that's the first color that I want to be matching, and I'll be using this to swatch the colors. BG57 is very close to this turquoise, so I'm going to grab my BG markers here, and I'm going to grab the BG57. So I'm going to consider this BG57 as my darker color, and then I'm going to grab my BG53, which is this one here, and I think I'm going to grab my BG000 just to be the lighter value. So with these three Copic markers, I'm going to bring my swatch, and I always like to start with the dark, but also this is just a preference. I'm going to scribble on this, and as if I am blending with my colors in my drawing, and see if I like it. And then I'm going to bring back my pattern paper, and it seems to be a good match. I'm happy with this. So this is the color scheme that I'm going to be using to match this color. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed with the rest of my colors, also using the stamped image on referenced right on the packaging, just so I know how many colors I need for the girl and so on and so forth, because I might not want to have all of those colors from the pattern paper. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and I will show you in the next slide my color selection, and then we'll start stamping. I just want to show you my thought process when I create a card like this with a whole bunch of different elements. I did a sketch where all my images would go. These three elements here are going to be stamped off of the main image paper. So I'm going to remove those. These will be fussy cut and popped. The element that I will stamp first is this table and lamp, because I want this frame to be behind that lamp. I will mask that lamp after I stamp it, and then I'm going to stamp my three frames. It'll all make sense to you once I start actually stamping. So I'm going to start with the table and lamp here. I'm going to put it on my block right now. Just going to move this up here, and this is where the Stamp-A-Majig comes into play. What we're going to do is we're going to create a template with our image onto our imaging sheet that comes with the Stamp-A-Majig, and I'm using obviously Memento Tuxedo Black ink. So basically you just take your imaging sheet and you butt it against that T here, and then you're going to take your acrylic block and you're going to line it up in that corner right there and stamp. And this doesn't have to be perfect because it is just a temporary image. I'm going to bring in my background cardstock with my other stamps right there, and I'm going to place that imaging sheet right over where I want this image to be. So I'm just going to remove my other three stamps because now I've set the stage. I know that my stamping begins here. And now I'm going to take my Stamp-A-Majig tool again and line it up with the corner of my imaging sheet. Remove the imaging sheet. Re-ink my stamp. And this step is really crucial. This tool here needs to stay in place exactly where it landed. I'm going to take my stamp again and line up that corner with the corner of my Stamp-A-Majig tool and just press down like so. So now I have perfect placement of the table and lamp. I'm going to stamp that table and lamp again, but this time I'm going to stamp it onto my post-it note, and I just want the lampshade. So I'm going to make sure that the lampshade hits the sticky back of that post-it note. Then I'll cut around that lampshade. And I have now created a mask for my lampshade, which I will overlay right over the stamped image, like so. Then I will take my large frame image, ink it up. I'll move this out of the way. And I will bring my imaging sheet. Again, line up the corner with the Stamp-A-Majig corner. Line up my stamp or my acrylic block stamp to get an imprint. Now I've got the imaging sheet, and this is what I need to line up. So again, I'm lining up the corner of my Stamp-A-Majig with the corner of that imaging sheet right here. Let go of the sheet. I make sure that the tool stays in place. Ink up the stamp and stamp again, like this. And now when I remove the lampshade mask, I will have two images that are merged perfectly together. So I'm going to repeat the same process for my two little frames using again the imaging sheet of the Stamp-A-Majig. I'm just going to go ahead and clean up the imaging sheet first with a baby wipe, like so. So now all these stamped images that I wanted in my background are stamped. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the other images onto the other pieces of cardstock. We need to do some more masking, and for that I'm going to grab the little girl, stamp her up in one of the leftover pieces of cardstock that I have, and going to stamp her up in the middle right here, so that I have enough room to stamp the chair right over her. Now I'm going to stamp that girl again on a post-it note, like so, and I'm going to cut this out. So I've now created a mask for the little girl, and the one thing I need to tell you is when you create a mask like this, it's very important that you take your time to cut very well, and you also need to cut outside of the stamped lines, otherwise you're going to have some crisscrossing lines over your main image. So now I'm just going to layer the mask right over the girl. Again, my imaging sheet with the Stamp-A-Majig, and I will ink up the chair stamp. And I'm repeating the same process as I did for the other images on the main cardstock. And now I can position the couch right over that girl. I want her to line up with the edge of the couch right like that. And now I'm going to realign my Stamp-A-Majig in the corner of my imaging sheet. Remove the imaging sheet, making sure that this is really well in place. I'm going to ink up the stamp once more. And lining up the corner again against the Stamp-A-Majig, I'm going to press down right over the mask onto the cardstock, like so. And now when you remove the mask, you've got another image that we've merged. So now the only image I need to stamp is the dog. I'm going to stamp it right over here because both images are going to be cut. But first I'm going to color everything, then I'm going to cut what I need to cut. Another tip that I wanted to mention to you, when you create a mask like this, keep the mask with the stamp. I've got the packaging for this stamp. When I'm done, I'm going to put back the stamp right into my packaging, and I'm going to also include the mask right inside the packaging. That way you don't have to redo your mask all the time. So if you, especially with stamps like these, when this girl is sitting, you know that she's going to be propped against something. Now that you have the mask done once, you can use it over and over again. Okay, so my coloring is done, and as you can see, I ended up changing my mind. The 3 frames in the background was just too busy for me. So I opted to redo the background and just put one little frame here behind the lamp. And there's my little girl all cozy on her couch reading a nice book, and her little doggy friend. And it's now time to assemble the card. So I'm going to take my large piece of pattern paper and the smaller one, and I'm going to add here the smaller one right over the big one, aligning it with the bottom. And I'm going to take this strip of paper that I cut down from that pattern paper and glue it down to here, aligning it from the top of that piece of paper. And now I'm going to cut the end off. And I'm going to take that opportunity to trim off the excess of the bottom part. And as you can see, I'd started gluing it onto my cardstock, but I changed my mind because it's just easier to do this before we adhere the whole page. And now I can glue this right over my cardstock. I'm just going to add a bit of adhesive. Next, I'm going to glue this piece onto the smaller mat. So I'm just going to do that here. I decided to do it on a slant just to add more interest. Alright, so now I'm going to glue down the little girl with some foam adhesive. And for this I'm going to add a double layer of foam adhesive behind here and underneath this little leg, and then just one single one behind the head. So I'm just doubling up. There we go. And the last thing we need to do is we need to add our cotton candy stickles. And I'm going to add some right over the roses and right around the lamp. Like so. Once it dries, it's going to look very glittery. I wanted to give you a close-up of the different elements of the card. The frame here was done using the Stardust glitter jelly roll pen by Sakura, and I've also added some of that around on the frill of her dress and on the page right here inside her book. And I also added a little bit on the dog tag. Oh, and also on the lamppost right here. So it's just enough to add a bit of interest without being overkill. And I love how shimmery it looks. And this is how you create a fun background using multiple stamps. I love, love, love the little darling stamps, and unfortunately the packaging does not really do justice to the stamp. The image really looks flat. So I quite enjoyed setting the scene for this little card, and I would probably add a sentiment right here or even up here just to make it more visually interesting. I also created this with a Prismacolor pencil and paper stump and some odorless mineral spirit or Gamsol, or there's a whole bunch of different brands out there. And I opted not to do any background shading because I have two of my main images that are popped quite high, so they do cast a very nice shadow, and I've thought that adding some more shadowing around here would be overkill. And I just I just spread my stickles all over. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. Bye!